Northwest London, a concrete jungle, a breeding ground for ambition and despair. This is where Pesci was born, amidst the urban sprawl. Life wasn't a gift, it was a fight. The streets were his classroom, poverty his teacher. Survival was the daily lesson. Loyalty, a currency more valuable than gold. Pesci learned young, he learned fast. The streets were a chessboard. He, a pawn, determined to become king. He saw the drug trade, the gangs, the violence. It wasn't a deterrent, it was an opportunity. Pesci saw a path to power, a way to escape the concrete cage. He would rise above, he would become something else entirely. He would become Pesci, the untouchable. Pesci wasn't built for brute force. He had something more potent. His mind, a strategic intellect. He saw angles others missed. He planned 10 steps ahead. Every move calculated, every word a weapon. He studied the game, the players, the rules. He understood power resided not in muscle, but in influence, in fear. He cultivated both, ruthlessly, efficiently. He gathered loyal followers, young men hungry for power. He offered them a way out, a chance to share in his growing empire. They became his soldiers. His eyes and ears on the street. Pesci was building something bigger, something darker. He was building an empire on a foundation of fear and ambition, and he was just getting started. Pesci's rise was swift, brutal. He started small, petty thefts, drug deals, but his ambition was boundless. He eliminated rivals, consolidated power. His name whispered with fear and respect. He understood the drug trade, the desperation, the profits. He established supply lines, controlled territories. His network expanded, money flowed, power grew. He diversified, armed robberies, protection rackets, anything that turned a profit. His reputation preceded him, a whisper, a threat, enough to command obedience. Pesci was no longer a pawn. He was a major player, a force to be reckoned with. He had climbed the ranks. The Northwest London underworld was his. Drugs were his currency, guns his enforcers, fear his most potent weapon. He controlled the flow of narcotics, cocaine, heroin, anything to keep the city addicted. He armed his men, military-grade hardware, a message to his enemies. He ruled through fear, brutal, calculated violence, a warning to anyone who dared to challenge him. His name alone instilled terror. He was judge, jury, and executioner. His empire was built on the suffering of others. He profited from addiction, from despair. He was a parasite feeding on the city's underbelly, and he was thriving. But power comes with a price, enemies, rivals, and the constant threat of betrayal. Pesci knew this. He was always watching, always waiting, always ready to strike. Section 5, the iron fist control through calculated brutality. Control was paramount. Pesci maintained it ruthlessly with an iron grip that never wavered. He instilled loyalty through fear and reward, a delicate balance that kept his followers in line. Generosity to those who served him well, ensuring their unwavering allegiance. Brutal punishment for those who faltered, a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal. He had eyes and ears everywhere, informants, spies. No secret was safe from his network. He knew his enemies' moves before they made them, always staying one step ahead. He was always one step ahead, always in control. His presence was felt in every corner of his domain. His violence was never impulsive. It was calculated, each move meticulously planned. Strategic, a message sent, a rival silenced, a warning to others. He ruled through fear, and his reputation was his greatest weapon. And it served him well, bringing him power and respect. But fear is a double-edged sword. It breeds paranoia, distrust, even among his closest allies. Pesci knew he couldn't let his guard down, not for a moment. Vigilance was his constant companion, because in his world, trust could get you killed. Every glance, every whisper could be a threat. In the end, control through calculated brutality was the only way to survive. Section 6. Whispers of violence, legends forged in blood. Stories of Pesci's brutality circulated like whispers in the wind. Tales of his swift retribution, his merciless punishments. He became a legend, a boogeyman. One story spoke of a rival gang member, found beaten within an inch of his life. A warning carved into his chest: Pesci owns this city. The message was clear. Another tale spoke of a traitor within his ranks, a man who dared to steal from him. He was found buried in the woods, hands severed. A reminder that loyalty was paramount. These stories weren't just stories, they were warnings. legends designed to instill fear, to solidify Pesci's grip on the city's underworld, and they worked. Section 7. The Shadow of Pesci, a legacy etched in fear. Pesci's name cast a long shadow over northwest London. He was a constant presence, even in his absence. His influence was undeniable, his power absolute. He had built an empire on fear and violence, and it showed no signs of crumbling. He was a master manipulator, a strategist, a predator at the top of the food chain, but could it last? Could anyone maintain such power indefinitely? Or was it only a matter of time before the empire crumbled, before the predator became the prey? The streets of northwest London held their breath, waiting, watching, for the next chapter in Pesci's reign to unfold. The price of power: enemies at every turn. Pesci's rise to power wasn't without consequence. Enemies multiplied, jealous rivals, vengeful families of his victims, all hungry for a piece of his empire or his demise. The police were relentless, raids, arrests. But Pesci always seemed to be one step ahead. His network of informants ran deep, his grip on the city unwavering. He lived a life of paranoia, always looking over his shoulder, trusting no one, not even his closest allies. The pressure was immense, the stakes higher than ever. He knew the game could change in an instant. One wrong move, one loose end, and his empire could crumble around him. A game without end. The cycle continues. The streets were a battlefield, a constant struggle for power. Pesci knew this. He had clawed his way to the top, and he was determined to stay there. He recruited new blood, young and hungry, eager to prove themselves. He molded them in his image, taught them the rules of the game, the importance of loyalty, the price of betrayal. The cycle continued. Violence begetting violence, despair fueling the drug trade. Pesci's empire thrived on the misery of others, and he was the conductor of this macabre orchestra. But for how long could he maintain control? How long before the streets demanded a new king, a new monster to fear? The legend endures, Pesci's grip on London's underworld. His name alone could send shivers down the spine of even the bravest souls. Pesci's reign of terror continued. His methods were ruthless, his actions calculated. He knew every corner, every shadow of the city. His legend grew with each passing day. He was a ghost, a phantom that haunted the streets, always just out of reach, a whisper in the night. His presence felt everywhere, yet he remained elusive. People spoke of him in hushed tones, afraid he might be listening. He was a master of disappearing, vanishing into thin air, leaving no trace behind. His ability to evade capture was legendary, of staying one step ahead of the law. The police were always on his trail, but he was always one move ahead, like a grandmaster in a deadly game of chess. His network of informants and safe houses ensured his survival. He was a phantom, a shadow that moved through the city's underbelly with ease, a nightmare you couldn't escape. His enemies lived in constant fear, knowing that Pesci could strike at any moment. His grip on the city's underworld remained firm. He controlled everything, from the smallest street gang to the most powerful crime syndicate. His rivals either fell in line or faced the consequences. Those who dared to challenge him quickly learned the price of defiance. He was a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable. His influence was felt in every corner of the city, from the darkest alley to the highest office, but even the strongest empires eventually crumble. The question wasn't if, it was when. The city waited with bated breath, wondering when Pesci's reign would end, and who would be there to pick up the pieces. The power vacuum left by his fall would spark a new wave of chaos and violence. A city holds its breath. What becomes of Pesci? The air is thick with tension, and the streets whisper his name. The story of Pesci is far from over. His reign continues, his legend grows. But for how long? Each day his power seems to expand, casting a longer shadow over the city. The city holds its breath, waiting, watching. Every corner, every alley, every window tells a story of fear and anticipation. Will his empire crumble under the weight of its own violence? The foundations of his power are built on chaos and bloodshed. Will he meet a violent end at the hands of his enemies? Rivals lurk in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Or will he vanish into the shadows, disappearing without a trace, leaving behind only whispers and rumors, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions? his name etched into the very fabric of the city. One thing is certain, the streets of northwest London will never be the same. The echoes of his actions will reverberate for years to come. Pesci has left his mark, an indelible impression on the city's soul, a scar on the city's soul, a wound that may never fully heal, a reminder that even in the heart of darkness, ambition and brutality can thrive. The underworld is alive and well, feeding on the city's fears. The story of Pesci is a cautionary tale, a warning to those who dare to follow in his footsteps, a glimpse into the dark underbelly of society where the lines between right and wrong blur and survival is the only law, a reminder that monsters are real and sometimes they win. In the end, the city will remember Pesci not just as a man but as a force of nature.